I'm Shauna Lawhorn with the League of Women Voters. Along with the League and SFGovTV, I'm here to discuss Proposition G, a ballot measure that will be before the voters on Tuesday, November 3rd.
Currently, San Francisco residents who are at least 18 years old and United States citizens may vote in San Francisco elections. San Francisco voters may vote for local and state candidates in ballot measures, as well as federal candidates. Proposition G is a charter amendment that would allow San Francisco residents to vote for local candidates and local ballot measures if those residents are U.S. citizens, at least 16 years old, and registered to vote. Local candidates include candidates for city offices, the Board of Education, and the Community College Board of Trustees. Proposition G would not permit 16 and 17-year-olds to vote for state candidates, state ballot measures, or federal candidates. If you vote yes, you want to amend the charter to allow San Francisco residents to vote for local candidates and local ballot measures if they are U.S. citizens at least 16 years old and registered to vote. If you vote no, you do not want to make this change.
I'm here with Sarah Chung, a youth commissioner who is also with the Yes on G campaign and a proponent of the measure. We're also joined by Richie Greenberg, a community advocate and political commentator who is an opponent of the measure. Thank you both for being here. We're going to start with some opening statements, and we will begin with Sarah.
Thank you so much, Shauna. I support Prop G because voting is a habit and 16 is a better age to start the habit of voting than 18. When you're 18, you're in a time of transition as you're moving away or starting college, and registering to vote can become difficult to navigate. When you're 16, this is a much more acceptable age to begin the lifelong habit of voting, and you're in an environment where you can make informed decisions with the support of teachers, peers, and family. Research shows that when you vote in your first eligible election, you're 25% more likely to vote in the next one. So allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote will make it more likely that they will continue voting as older adults. Additionally, 16 and 17-year-olds care and will use their vote. They have been at the forefront of several social justice movements, most notably for climate justice and Black Lives Matter. 16 and 17-year-olds are the ones organizing major protests throughout the city, such as the Mission High School and Golden Gate Bridge protests, and they continue to carry this momentum, organizing and holding elected officials accountable. In cities such as Tacoma Park in Maryland, where 16 and 17-year-old voting is allowed for local elections, the voter turnout rate of 16 and 17-year-olds is double the rate of the general electorate. Young people are also the ones spearheading this Prop G campaign. It was placed on the ballot after being proposed by the San Francisco Youth Commission, the top commission in the nation, and young people continue to lead the effort. Prop G will build a lifelong habit of voting and ensure that our city's democracy is representative of our population. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We're going to move to Richie for your opening statement.
Thank you so much for having me here today. So Prop G is asking the question, should 16 and 17-year-olds be given the ability to vote in city elections? Well, voters should reject this proposition overwhelmingly as being a non-serious question this election day. There are three real factors why and what we need to consider: legality, maturity, and the effects of indoctrination of children in schools and on social media. First of all, legality, of course, refers to the fact that 16 and 17-year-olds are still children in the eyes of the law and are incapable of experiencing and performing many tasks which teach us responsibility to adults. Children cannot sign a contract. They cannot apply for credit cards. They can't purchase a car or rent a car, buy a house, own a business, and other many examples like this. How can we let teens vote on approving such serious issues as property taxes, business regulations, control or taxation of marijuana, changes to city government operations? The concept of teen voting is absurd. The second idea of maturity that often we see through research and reports from psychologists that cognitive functions, rational decision-making are not developed until at least the mid-20s. And the third problem is social justice activism in schools that are indoctrinating our children by teachers, activists, and other course curriculum. So for those issues, we should vote no.
Thank you, Richie. So I think both of you touched on this question, and it's just, we'll start with Richie, but it's 16 and 18, they're just 2 years apart. So why do you believe that these 2 years do or don't make a difference? What is critical about these 2 years?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. First of all, in a maturity way, yeah, there are some 16-year-olds that are more mature, if we want to use that word, than even 20, 25-year-olds. So that is part of the equation, and it's not the only, because some will say, well, I know someone, my next door neighbor or my brother or sister is so much more mature, but it goes beyond that. And I already touched on that on this issue in my introduction. It's legality. 18 years old is the age of the majority. It's the age that society and the laws have been written to say this is the point that now you can function as an adult. We trust you at this point. There has to be some time, some age that we start. You can't keep going lower and lower and lower. And 18 has been what has been the established for all the legality for signing contracts, joining the army, and more.
Same question to you, Sarah. Why 16?
Like I mentioned in my opening statement, when you're 18, you're in a time of transition, you're going off to college, you're moving away, and this becomes very difficult to figure out how to register to vote, or registering to vote or going to vote can become on the back burner. When you're 16, you're learning about civics or US history for the first time. All 16-year-olds have to take this. And this makes an ideal time to learn about voting for the first time. Additionally, you're in an environment where you're supported by peers and family and teachers to make these informed decisions. And in terms of maturity, actually 16-year-olds have the same political knowledge as 21-year-olds. When you're 16, you have something called cold cognition fully developed, and cold cognition is the slow, deliberate decision making, thinking processes necessary for voting, and this is already fully developed when you're 16. And hot cognition, however, is the more spur of the moment thinking, which is not fully developed when you're 16, but voting only relies on cold cognition. So 16-year-olds are able to vote and are able to have the thinking or like the maturity to be able to vote.
Thank you,
And
Sarah.
additionally, yeah, of course.
Okay, and we're going to do the second question, and it's going to go to you, Sarah, first. So a similar measure was put before the voters fairly recently in 2016 and did not pass. 4 years later, however, San Francisco faces new challenges, and we are revisiting the idea of youth voting. Why do you believe now is the time for this measure to pass?
I think that especially what's been going on politically in the past 4 years has made it so that young people feel very spurred to take action. Like I mentioned, youth are at the forefront of so many social justice movements that have arisen, especially in these past few years, such as the Black Lives Matter movement or with climate justice. We see that young people are the ones pushing forward with this, and they're continuing to fight and hold elected officials accountable. I think that a main argument is that, oh, 16 and 17-year-olds will care for a little bit and they won't care anymore. But we see that that's completely untrue. And then we see that young people are continuing to order and continuing to demand action from elected officials for years on and for years on, because as cliche as it sounds, it is most definitely our future. So 16 and 17-year-olds we see them taking action in a way that we haven't seen 16 and 17-year-olds taking action in the past. So I think that by revisiting this, hopefully voters can see that 16 and 17-year-olds really care about local issues and how they affect us.
Thank you, Sarah. Same question to you, Richie. This was voted down fairly recently, so why do you feel like it's not time to revisit it?
It's not time, and it should just be put to rest and just never bring this up again. There is holding public officials accountable has nothing to do with teen voting, has nothing to do with climate action, has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. So what we really need to look at, though, is the indoctrination of children in school. Social justice is not a way to run elections. This is the big problem that we have now, where the students in school, including teachers that are bring their kids out of class and participate in protests and marches, is not a way to teach civics. It's not a way to rationally show uh, both sides or more than one side to an argument. We see over and over again that there's the indoctrination. The children don't know what they're protesting, and we don't need this to be coming to the forefront as another ballot measure now or again.
Thank you, Richie. Closing statements now, and we're going to start with you, Sarah.
Yep. So Prop G will build the lifelong habit of voting in young people and additionally advance equity in our democracy. Currently, the 16 and 17-year-old population in San Francisco is predominantly people of color. 77% of 16 and 17-year-olds are people of color compared to 60% of the overall population. Allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote will help ensure that young people of color are represented in our democracy. Additionally, 16 and 17-year-olds should get a say in decisions that directly affect them. Under COVID-19 especially, 16 and 17-year-olds are among the most impacted as they have many responsibilities. On top of education, they also take care of household duties and can get a job and pay taxes, some even taking on jobs as essential workers. 13% of grocery store workers are ages 16 through 19, so they should get a say in how their tax dollars are used and what their safety under COVID-19 looks like. Also, this is not a new idea. There are already 19 countries and 4 cities in the US that allow 16 and 17-year-old voting, and statistics show that voter turnout in these places have increased directly as a result of enfranchising them. Prop G has earned unanimous support from the SF Board of Supervisors and Board of Education, as well as endorsements from Mayor London Breed, Senator Scott Wiener, Assemblymember Chu, DCCC, SF League of Women Voters, SF Labor Council, and over 32 community-based organizations. I urge you to vote yes on Prop G to strengthen our democracy by enfranchising 16 and 17-year-olds for local elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Closing statement from you, Richie, please.
Sure, thank you. The people who put this proposition on November's ballots are politicians. What politicians are saying about Prop G shouldn't matter, especially since so many of them don't even have kids themselves. The parents themselves should have to say whether they believe their children should vote or not. I personally posed this question to literally thousands of locals here in San Francisco, and the overwhelming response is no. How can we allow children to vote on things like Prop A? Now, if you look at this coming November's rest of the ballot measures, $500 million bond measure. Prop B, creating a new department in San Francisco City Hall. Prop F, revamping business tax. Prop I, real estate transfer tax. Prop J, parcel tax. All these different taxes, business regulations, and government regulations. The children here don't know what's going on. We need to be much more responsible in teaching them in a non-responsible way. So that way, because they don't know what it's like to affect taxes, business regulation. Could you imagine your 16 or 17-year-old voting to raise taxes on your own home? We can't have that. So right now, the children should be working on doing good in school, their studies, and preparing for college. And we should not allowing them to vote. So please vote no on Prop G.
Thank you both for your comments and for your time. We hope that this discussion has been informative. For more information on this and other ballot measures in this year's election, please visit the San Francisco Elections website at sfelections.org. This year, all registered voters in California will be mailed a vote-by-mail ballot starting on October 5th. If you plan to return your ballot by mail, your ballot return envelope must be postmarked by Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd. Alternatively, you may drop off your vote-by-mail ballot in person starting October 5th at the City Hall Voting Center located outside of Bill Graham Civic Auditorium, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. through 5 p.m. You can also drop off your ballot at the City Hall Voting Center on the 2 weekends before Election Day, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And if you don't vote early, make sure to vote in person at one of the 588 polling locations across the city or at City Hall on Tuesday, November 3rd. Thank you.